Hi there, in this video we're going to be looking at a requirements specification. So a requirements specification is something that we will use to help plan out systems, and the video itself will be relatively short. However, the actual piece of work, the document that you're going to be completing will actually be likely to be extremely lengthy. So you're going to need to do a requirements spec which will identify what you currently have, and it will also highlight what you need to have in your future system, along with any hardware and software, so that you can really kind of identify where you would want to potentially improve, where you might want to change things, any potential constraints that you may come across. So for example, a constraint is basically anything that stops you doing whatever you want to do. So one of the most obvious constraints is usually based around time. Very few projects let you do whatever you want. Cost is usually another constraint, especially if you are working towards projects which don't have a lot of funding towards them, or indeed any funding, in fact. So your requirement spec, over the course of your college career, you're going to do a lot of these types of specifications, design specifications, requirement specifications, and a lot of them are very similar, varying only with the actual kind of designs within them. And you know, they are a fair amount of work. They're usually quite lengthy, as I've said previously, and what you'll find is that you may want to do parts of the planning or design outside of the, I'll get the word out, outside of the document itself, and then you can bring them into the Word document at a later date. So for example, if you are doing the data flow diagrams or a design of potential inputs, then you might want to do that in specialist software designed to actually, you know, create those types of design, and then you can bring them into a Word document later on, and it's perfectly okay to do that. You know, a word processor, commonly Word is not designed to do those sorts of things. A word processor is good at being a word processor. It's not particularly good at being something that you would design products with. So don't be afraid if it goes on for several pages, and also don't be afraid to include several pages for things that you need to clearly show. What I mean by this is, I've had students in the past who, let's say we're doing a website wireframe. I know I'm not asking you to do a wireframe in this particular piece of work, but if, let's say I'm asking for a design then, and what they do is try and put all the designs on a single page or something like that, and the upshot of that is all the designs become really small and cramped and more difficult to see, and that's not the purpose. You know, you want them to be nice and easy to see, and if that means you need to go on to more pages to do that, then that's what you need to do. You know, at this point, certainly while you are in education, you're probably not going to be printing this stuff out, and therefore you will need to, you know, there's no reason why you would not make them nice and clear and use as much space as what you need to, really. Okay, so what we're going to include, so this is not an exhaustive list, and you may find that if you are doing other projects, they may well ask for slightly different things. So for this particular project, of course, you have a scenario, but actually the scenario itself, a lot of things are going to be hypothetical. A lot of things are going to be what you may imagine the system to be, and of course the shop doesn't exist, the current system doesn't exist. So you know, there's a lot of things where it may be a little bit vague in that respect. So this will sound maybe quite horrible, but you will have to maybe be quite creative in the way that you're describing some of this stuff, and be like, okay, well, in my mind's eye, this is what I think that they might have. Okay, so in the real world, obviously, you will visit these places, and you'll be able to see and talk to people that are there. Sorry, when I say you can see the system, you can see the processes in place. But in this one, it's all going to be, so it is a scenario based, and the scenario is not massively unrealistic. Anybody that's been into a restaurant before should be relatively familiar in terms of the way that restaurants work, and there's been tons of different documentaries involving restaurants and so on. So it's not something that is completely out of the blue, I would hope, but certainly their current systems might be something that you might need to be creative with. Okay, so what to include? So in this instance, I'm looking for you to include a background. So what does it currently do? What does the current system do? Okay, it may not include a computer at all. If it doesn't include a computer at all, you just need to put what is there. Okay, you just need to describe how processes work. Do they use, I don't know, post-it notes? Do they verbally bellow at people, shout, in other words? Do they draw funky pictures on the wall, or is there a whiteboard, or whatever it might be? So how does the current system work? Description of what your future system needs to do, okay, and the features and the functions of it. What do your prospective customers want from this system? Okay, and you may well find that what they want from the system is different from what you think the system should have, and maybe that's something that you may need to sit down and discuss with them. After all, if you are the person with the qualification in this area, you are the expert on it. However, if they're the ones that are paying you, then you have to bear in mind that they are the ones who will get the final say, always, generally. They may be unrealistic, frequently unrealistic, frequently underpaying you, but that's what you're going to have to deal with in the real world. Timescales, how long do you have to do it? Okay, so for you guys, it will be, in theory, from whenever you get set the task to whenever the task is due in. But in the real world, you may have several weeks or months to do it. Okay, in order to do these things properly, it's not something that you can just do off the top of the hat. Really, it's not something that will magic itself into fruition. You're going to have to take into account a lot of potential variables here. Okay, and let's say something like you may start off with some time frame involved, and then it may get extended or it may get shortened, so you might need to be a bit flexible with it. Okay, but for you guys, it will be a quite set amount of time to do this. Obviously, what is the purpose of a new system, right? So we're looking at a fairly specific process. Okay, your system may do or may need to do a few things, which is pretty common. Very rarely does a system do a single thing, and in which case you just need to describe what it needs to do. Okay, what ultimately does the system need to produce? Okay. Who is the intended audience? And maybe that sounds a bit confusing, but basically, who are the people that are going to use this system? Okay, so who are the people that are going to put information into the system, and who are the people that are going to use the system? So those two are going to need, and also who are the people that are going to need results from the system. So you may need to have a couple of different thought processes going on there, because let's say if you're entering data into the system, you may need different things like interfaces to those who are just using the system. So let's say if you are in a shop and somebody puts an order in, then you as a customer are going to need different interfaces to what the store needs. So you as a customer might want information on, is the product in stock, yes or no? Ultimately, if it's not in stock, how long is it going to take to be in stock? If it is in stock, then how long is it going to take before you can go and pick it up? Is there going to be a delivery fee, or can you go into store and pick it up? Whereas if you are working in the store, then you want to know, all right, so there's this product somebody has ordered. When are they going to pick it up? Okay, have they given you that information? But also, where is it in a warehouse? Because if it's a reasonably big warehouse, then you might need a specific location. You think about something like Argos, which if you are in CMK or any reasonably sized city, Argoses tend to be quite big shops. But actually, the shop bit of it itself is not that big if you look at it. It's just somewhere where you go in, you browse for a brochure, and you put your details in, and then they have to search for this huge warehouse which is out the back. Now, I've never been into the Argos warehouse, but I would imagine that there is some kind of ordering system there. So in other words, there will be sections for different products. Maybe they'll label them A, B, C, D. I don't know. It's a guess. But they're going to order them some way so that they can distinguish between them. They're going to want to know if it's being collected, paid for, and so on. Okay. So it really does kind of depend who is using the system and what do they need. Okay. User characteristics. Okay. So what we mean by that is, are they, for example, experienced users of IT? Okay. Are they experienced users, or are they going to use the system a lot? Are they likely to need a lot of help with the system? Are they I'm trying to think of the right phrase. I'm not sure I can say this particularly without sounding condescending, but could they be old? Could they be young? What other characteristics are you proposing of these systems? Are they going to be able to access them on a mobile device? Okay, because actually, as you get older, it becomes progressively more difficult to use mobile devices. They're not designed for people who have mobility problems. Okay, without meaning to sound rude, a lot of older people do have mobility problems, especially in their finger joints. Okay, you've got to need discussion with your end user. All right, a transcription. So transcription means you need to write up the interview. So what you're going to need to do there is have an interview with your end user. You're going to need to record the interview in some way, and then you're going to need to write it up. Okay, and then it's going to be included in your requirement specification. So your end user is going to tell you exactly what they want from the system. Okay. What to include? Okay, specifications, current and proposed. All right. So what are your current specs of the machines, and then what are your proposed specs of the machine? So that might link into the third point down here, which is proposed systems. Okay, so obviously you may be thinking about things like, are you going to have a really high-end proposed system where everything is really fancy? Obviously it's going to cost a lot of money, it's going to require a lot of upskilling in terms of training. It could take a long time to be implemented. Or are you going to go for a lower spec proposed system, in which case you may not have all of the fancier stuff, but in terms of cost effectiveness it may be that much better. It may be easier for somebody to learn if it's that bit cheaper. All of these things that you need to be thinking about there. Interfaces refers to how are people going to interface with it. Okay, so like I said, it could be for a mobile device, it could be for a desktop, it could be through tablet. Is it going to be a web based program? Is it going to be an app? How do you think you're going to do that? Okay, or is it going to be just a standalone program, a complete standalone program, like Steam, I guess you could say. Okay. Eventually you're going to get to a point where you choose a solution. Okay, so we want a range of proposed systems. Generally we'd be looking at least 3, and like I said, you could consider price points is a good place to start, because there is a massive difference between a high-end proposed system and a much lower-end proposed system, and then you could have one in between, and you may need to prioritize which things you want to spend a lot of money on. Okay. This is obviously a lot of stuff. Okay, a lot of things to think about. It can be quite overwhelming at the beginning. So my advice to you would be to start off and try and break things down into your manageable chunks. Okay, if you just start off and start writing, this is going to be the proposed system, but I do, then you may find it a real struggle, and you may find yourself starting again and again and again and again. But what I would do in your position would be to sit down and obviously make a list of everything your system needs to do, fully understand what the new system needs to do, because even if you have different solutions at different price points, ultimately the system still needs to do what it needs to do, and then when you fully understand it and you fully know what exactly it needs to do, then you can start actually designing it and start being, okay, this is what my system needs to do. These are the potential solutions for it, and then you can describe it in depth. Okay, it could be a big document. Right, don't be afraid if the document ends up at double digits long in length. Okay, in terms of what we need, if that's how it ends up, that's how it ends up. Okay, if you're going to be including things like data flow diagrams or wireframes for potential interfaces, which could be both included in here, then it could easily find its way into double digits in length. But nobody is going to if it's in more depth than it needs to be at this point, then that is better than if you are being really kind of vague and really quite skimpy with your detail. I mean, if you're the problem with being skimpy in your detail is it leaves a lot to chance in terms of what if the end user or the person that's paying you looks at your designs and goes, well, I expected something completely different from what you suggested here, and then you're like, well, but I meant something else. But if your text is quite vague, then it leaves quite a bit to chance from that point of view. Okay, well, I hope that will help you out throughout the course of this task. And as I said, it is a pretty big piece of work, but it's not massively technical. But there's just a lot of it, I think. So I think it's just a case of doing bits, maybe little and often, trying to understand exactly what the system needs to do, and then you will eventually get there. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.